Hello, Serge here from the backyard driving range. All right, we have I guess we could call it an in your own words testimonial. This comes to us from Randy Wolf. He's from Atlanta. Randy writes it a fair amount of time. He's one of my steady students, and Randy's also really big into club fitting. He believes in it a lot. And so he's had custom fitted clubs for years and years and years. And he's been to Doc Griffin and got a set there, and he just told me he's thinking about getting a new set made pretty soon. But he sent me this in because it's things I've been saying for a long time, and he finally had something happen to him and he realized some of the things I've been saying as being always correct. So here he goes, and this is Randy and Randy Wolf, and he says, my testimonial for the PPGS. Serge, just a quick email that I hope you and other members of the Serge Nation might find helpful. I was unable to play golf, let alone swing a club or practice for over 8 weeks due to a surgery that I had. It was not related to my back, shoulder, knee, or arms. It was surgery for an internal issue for a man my age. Anyway, to keep the story short, I went out and played yesterday for the first time in 8 weeks. I concentrated on my setup and alignment, and with nothing but a simple swing thought, which was to swing easy, I hit it straight from tee to green in most cases. I was not as long with my shot, so I did take an extra club on numerous occasions. I can understand that, right? No sense after any kind of surgery that you're going to go out there and try and go full bore. And sometimes that's what people realize, that, whoa, you know, maybe I've been swinging too hard all my life. I'm just out here and trying to do-bop it, and I'm hitting it pretty darn good, and I'm not that much shorter, and so maybe when I really can swing a little bit, give it a little bit more, I don't need to go crazy anymore because this is pretty good. I've heard a lot of people say that too. But anyways, getting back to Randy's letter. The results were 37, 39, 76. I was amazed, but soon came to realize that the PPGS vertical three-quarter swing that I had learned over 5 years ago, and he puts this in all capital letters, simply works even after a layoff of 8 weeks. Two other members in my group were dumbfounded at my ability to hit a golf ball that well after this long a layoff. The third member of the group knew exactly what was going on, as he has heard me preach the virtues of your PPGS swing for years. The other two members of our foursome both stated that they wanted a swing like mine for the new year. I told them both to go to www.swingsurgeon.com. Excellently done. And you will find exactly what you're looking for. They both wrote the website down on the back of the scorecards before we left the 7th tee box. In conclusion, what I'm trying to convey here is that the PPGS swing is simple and reliable. It was easy and painless for me to learn over 5 years ago. It is a simple and reliable swing to use for the golfer who plays 2 to 3 times a week, or the golfer who plays once a month. If your golf swing is simple, it will be reliable, and it will still work even if you don't play as often as one may want to play. I had a rotational swing for over 30 years, and if I didn't play for 8 weeks, I would have been a mess my first couple of times back out on a golf course. I look at my ball rack in my office, and I keep a ball with the date on it when I break par. So as you can see, Randy's a pretty good player. I'd say he's a solid 7 handicap. Maybe he can get down to 5 when he's really going well. And so he's a pretty solid player. So he says, I keep a ball with a date on it when I break par. I can say that 80% of those subpar rounds came after I started using the PPGS. Thank you again for all the research and development that you put into this different approach to swinging a golf club. It works. Best regards, Randy Wolf. All right, thank you, Randy. Thanks a lot. And nothing makes me feel better as when I receive emails or letters like this, or I run into Sergites and they tell me this, and I've had Sergites come up to me in an airport and come up to me when they met me someplace else, and especially out on tour when I'm out there with DJ. And that's the place where I really see a lot of you. Y'all come up and you're looking up DJ, because I appreciate it that you're all following him and everything else. And you come up and you say these nice things to me, and in many cases walk around with me the whole round, and it's great. I love it, and I enjoy talking to you, and it just makes me feel good, because that you feel good, feel better, playing without pain and playing better golf, like Randy just said. let me just, I'll tell you one of the best ones that ever happened to me a long, long time ago. This was back in the early 90s, and I had a young mini tour player come up to me and asked me to start helping him. And this was back before the X Factor rotational swing came into vogue. But this young gentleman was about 6'1", about as skinny as this shaft, and he was very supple and flexible, and he'd always start his swing with the right knee kicking in like this, he'd have this little, he'd bump the hips, and then he had the club back, and he had a very big vertical, high hand swing, and he was up here, but man, he could turn, I mean, he had that shoulder way past the ball, the hands were still up high, but his hands, if you drew a line from the butt of the club to the back of the ground, it was 7 or 8 inches behind his heels, so he was deep into the sacred barrel ground, and he managed to really drive to the left, to the forward side. He was a right-hander, to the left side, the forward side, and come in here, and I mean, this guy had the purest hook you've ever seen. But I mean, he even hooked a sand wedge 10 or 15 yards. With a driver, man, he had these beautiful 20, 30-yard hooks sometimes, all right, in the fairway. But he was a pretty good player, but it was quite inconsistent. And so I started working diligently with him, and I mean, we took him in like 2 years, and he got onto the PGA Tour. But the last year, just before he got on the PGA Tour, he called me up one time. He was on what was then called the Nike Tour, I believe, or the Ben Hogan Tour. It might have been that far back. And he called me up, and he asked me to fly out to California to work with him, and because it was like the next to the last tournament, and at that time, they only gave 5 cards every year. And he was number 4 on the list, and he just wasn't hitting it good. So I canceled a bunch of lessons and zipped out there. That's when I was still at Harbortown Golf Links in Hilton Head, and I zipped out to, he was in Northern California. I flew into San Francisco and everything else, and he had sent me a picture, and for all the time, and because from the very first time I worked with him, he had this kick to go like this, boom, and it had that. I just felt that was so ingrained that I didn't want to change it. But flying out there, he had sent me some videos. Back then, a lot of them had cameras. They would take a camera, they'd FedEx it to me. Remember, this is before internet and emails, where you could take a video with your iPhone or whatever phone you got, and zip it to me, and I get it within minutes. Back then, most of my players had cameras, and they had the little cassette player cameras, and they'd FedEx me the cassette. So if they took a picture on Monday, even if they're in California, and FedEx it next day, I had it by Tuesday noon the next day, and I could look at it on my little machine back there, and then they'd call me that afternoon. I'd tell them what I saw. So even with all that, I'd been watching them, and I was finally getting to the point that I didn't like this anymore. I was into the wide knees outward pressure, but I let him get away with it. And so finally, on this occasion, he was kicking his knees so hard and kicking his body so forward, and like this, he was going down, as you can see, and forward with his head, and then it came back, and it went over here, and it got even deeper, and then he was just like a pine tree swaying in a 50-mile-an-hour breeze. And that's when I said, that's it, no more of this stuff. So I started working away from it. I started working out of it, went right there, and it got a lot better. That was the big thing. He was all over the place. And so ultimately what happened after a time, I got him to the point where when he came back to see me, I had the big round buckets that might hold 300 balls. I had him come out and practice with Bermuda shorts on, because it was still at a little bit more than I wanted to see, but it was a heck of a lot less. But I wanted to get rid of it all, basically. So I had him come out with Bermuda shorts on, so that his legs were bare right here, and we put that big bucket in between him here, and I had him stand there with that bucket in the middle, and so he couldn't do this, but just enough outside so that when his legs stayed here, when he swung and his foot came out, it would go outside the bucket, and he wouldn't be scraping his knee up on it. And that's when I really started to cure him. But the best thing he ever said to me was after we had worked a while and he really started getting good, he said, "You know what's the best thing about this swing, Serge?" He says, now he never had back problems up to that time, but at the time he was probably no more than about 25 or 26. And he said, with my old swing, if I even took 1 week off, sometimes it would take me a week to get back to a rhythm and a timing and everything else where I was hitting the ball, what I could say was relatively under control. He said with the peak performance swing, he said, all I go is out to the range, and in 5 minutes I got it back. 5 or 10 minutes, as compared to a week or 2 weeks. He said, so before, a lot of times before, man, I knew I had to take some time off, or we just had time off, and I knew that when I came back, it was going to be days, if not weeks, before I could really get my timing and my tempo back really good to where I could feel like I was spot on again. He said, with this swing, it comes back in 5 or 10 minutes, and I'm pretty darn good and pretty sharp and really hitting good golf shots. And again, that's a big thing about the PPGS, and that's the biggest thing I wanted to leave with you all about, is what Randy said here about 8 weeks, never touched the club, couldn't swing. That same thing happened to me after I had my heart surgery. I was like 3 months, 2 months or something, where I couldn't do anything. Came back and I hit it, and I mean, anybody that knows me now knows how hardly ever practice. It's a very simple swing, and it's got less moving parts that move a lot less. So when you got less things moving in him, and what does move is moving less than normal, you got less margin of error. When you got less margin of error, you're going to have a greater degree of success. And that's the whole thing with the peak performance golf swing. And so not only is it a body friendly swing, but it's also completely efficient, and it's the swing with the least amount of turn, the least amount of movement, because we hold the body slower and move it less and hold it tighter, so we can swing the arms and the club faster. So we're the rock on the end of a string, right? When the rock is going faster, what happens to the hand? It's going faster at the end of that string. The hand moves less. Well, here's the rock, here's the string, and here's the hand. So in the immortal words of DJ, when he said one day, when somebody said, "What do you do when you want to hit the ball harder?" And DJ just stood up like this. He was getting ready to hit a shot, and he stood up. He said, "I hold my knees more and I swing my arms faster that way, pointing at the target." So this is what Randy's talking about, and this is what that young man that I taught was talking about. He said, you don't lose it, because everything stays efficient, and bang. Hold the hand more so we can swing the rock faster, okay? That's the peak performance golf swing. Efficient, consistent, and that's how you shoot lower scores. That's it for the Surge for today, and I'll be speaking with you all again soon.